Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I am currently reading almost 50 series. So, a goal of mine this year is to get those series down. And I am planning on doing several vlogs where I'm finishing up as many series as I can. This vlog, I'll be finishing 5 series, and they are the Mind F series by St. Abbey. I still need to read the last 4 novellas in this series. So the first book in the Mindfuck series, The Risk, I read for my first vlog of the year, reading BookTube's most hyped romances. So if you want to watch my thoughts on that first book, definitely check that video out. Then I need to finish the Letters of Enchantment series, the first book being Divine Rivals, which I read for BookTube's favorite romances of 2023, which I'll leave linked for you. I still need to read the second and final book, Ruthless Vows, which actually came out at the beginning of this year, which, if you want to know all the synopses for these books, they'll be in the vlog itself, and I'll have timestamps so you can go to whichever series you're interested in. Then I still need to finish the Kings of Sin series. I read King of Pride for the Goodreads Choice Awards, which I also vlogged, in anticipation for King of Sloth, which by the time of filming this has already come out. But I wanted to read King of Greed and King of Wrath, which are the third and first book in this series. So I read this series out of order, and you're gonna see in the vlog that I start with King of Greed and end with King of Wrath. Also, if you hadn't noticed yet, it's not just finishing series, it's also getting caught up on series. So obviously, after King of Sloth, it's to me, that's a closed series, considering Anna's next book in that series will only come out in 2025. Then I want to finish the Souls Trilogy by Harley LaRue. So I read Her Soul to Take and Her Soul for Revenge last year, and I still need to read Soul of a Witch. And last but most certainly not least is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. So I read Wildfire once again for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I really, really loved that one. And I never got around to this one back when it was very hyped. And obviously the third book comes out in August, and I want to get caught up on this series before the third book comes out. So Icebreaker will get me caught up on that series. So these are the 5 series that I'll be getting caught up on or finishing in this vlog. And I really hope you enjoyed this vlog. It's going to be a long one, considering it's not just 5 series. It's going to be 5 full-length books and 4 novellas. So that's a lot to talk about. So leave me a ring emoji for King of Wrath. And yeah, let's cue to the vlog. So I'm here to review the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. So I read the second book, the third book, the fourth book, and the fifth book. I read the second and third book in March and the fourth and fifth book in April, and I fucking loved it. It was such a good series. So I actually read The Risk in January. I read it for my most hyped books vlog, which I'll leave that linked for you. So if you want to know more of my in-depth thoughts on the first book, check that video out. I actually gave The Risk 4 stars, and even though that book did leave off on a cliffhanger, I waited like around 2 months to continue on. But I do think if I had continued on back then, I would have binged this series without a shadow of a doubt, because once I read the second book, I could not stop myself from reading this series. In fact, I was having some other like required reads for vlogs and stuff like that I had to hold myself back from continuing on. And while I was not reading them, I was constantly thinking about these characters. I was dreaming about these characters. I was having nightmares about this series. This series is one of my favorite series I've read ever, and it definitely will make an appearance in my favorite books of 2024. I'm not sure where it will fit, but it will definitely be there. Let me give you a synopsis, because the Mind F series follows Lana, who's a serial killer. Something horrifying happened in her past, and now she is getting her revenge, and her revenge is she has this list, and she is one by one torturing and killing these men that did this thing to her in the past. And one day she's at a coffee shop and she meets this FBI agent named Logan, and they start having a relationship, but he's actually the FBI agent on her case. So obviously shenanigans ensue. This series is so good to me because I really love Lana. I worship the ground she walks on. In fact, the Lady Gaga quote, I'm gonna just quote you Lady Gaga, because this quote, if that's not about Lana Myers, then I don't know which quote fits her. So I don't believe in the glorification of murder. I do believe in the empowerment of women. That is so Lana coded to me. Like, that completely encompasses how I feel about Lana. Like, I don't believe in the glorification of murder, but I do believe in the empowerment of women. Iconic quote for an iconic lady. And Logan, I just really loved. I thought he was such a great guy. He was so sexy and so swoon worthy and such a good guy. I really loved him. I fell in love with him just like Lana did. And between them, I truly don't know which one I love more, because I love them both so much. I love the side characters in here, and it makes me sad that St. Abbey died, because I think, especially with how popular this series has gotten in recent years, I do think that she could have written more books in this world, and I think she would have done a beautiful job. This was the perfect combination of a thriller and a romance. Like I said, I could not stop myself from reading it. Every book ended on a cliffhanger, and I really hope that they'll turn this into a TV show one day, because I think this would be the perfect TV show. Like, think Killing Eve, but also that one TV show about the clones, I forget the name. Orphan Black. I think if you love both those shows, definitely check out the Mindfuck series, because you're not going to be disappointed. Also, I love the fact, so this is like 5 novellas, but altogether, like, every novella has a little bit more than 100 pages. So altogether, this bind up, like this whole series, has a little bit over 600 pages, I'm pretty sure. It was perfect. And I also like the fact that I counted every one of them as their separate books. So obviously, so that is also good for your Goodreads challenge. But I really loved it, and I'm so glad that I finished this series. Like I said, it is one of my favorites. I do think all I want to do right now is buy the bind up, even though it's 40 euros, and reread this book physically. Yeah, this was a masterpiece in my opinion. I'm so glad that I finished it. And I love finishing series so much. It makes me feel so accomplished, and especially a series like this, where, like I said, all I wanted to do was read this. And I was actually slumping hardcore, and Sidetrack, the second book, pulled me right out of that reading slump. And after that, I have been a reading machine, so I also have to thank this series for pulling me out of a reading slump. This was so good. If you've not read this, I would highly recommend it, but it is very graphic though, so definitely check your triggers before reading this. And I gave the first book 4 stars actually, but I know once I reread it, it's gonna change into a 5-star, because I love these characters so much, and now that I know the background and everything that happened to her, this is 100% a 5 stars without a shadow of a doubt. This is one of my favorite series of all time, and like I said, I cannot imagine this not being one of my favorite books I read this year. I actually have a couple other vlogs that I'm gonna do now, so I'm not gonna continue on with this vlog until closer to the end of the month, so I'm gonna pause this vlog for now. Finishing series makes me feel so accomplished. I really need to do that more, because I get so happy and giddy once I finish a series. So I'm very glad that I'm doing this vlog, because I cannot wait to finish all these series. I guess that is it for now. And you'll see me again, for you in a couple seconds, for me in a couple weeks, to continue on with this vlog. I am currently reading Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second and final book in her, what's that book? Divine Rivals duology, I guess. I don't know if it's called Divine. I don't know if the series is called that. Let me check. Oh, Letters of Enchantment, of course. So I am on page 202. So I'm like literally halfway through, and I am really loving this. I might be loving this more than the first book actually. So I gave the first book 4.5 stars. I really loved it, but the ending brought it down half a star for me. And this is the sequel, and this takes place right after the events of the first book. So for those of you who don't know, even though most of you do, because I read Divine Rivals for reading BookTube's favorite romances of 2023, which I'll leave linked for you. The first book you follow Iris, well, the second book you also follow Iris and Roman, but in the first book you follow Iris and Roman, who are reporters for this gazette in this world that is technically a fantasy, but really it's historical fiction. This is actually a perfect mix between a fantasy, historical fiction, and a romance. So this takes place in a setting that is very World War I-esque or World War II-esque, but instead of nations fighting each other, it's gods fighting each other, and they're using people to fight their wars. And this world has like hints of magic everywhere. And Roman and Iris work at this newspaper, and they are rivals because they both want the same position, so they're definitely at odds. But Iris's brother has gone off to war. There's another paper that wants war correspondence, and she enlists because she hasn't heard anything from her brother. And before she actually enlists, she has this magical typewriter that she can write letters and put them in her closet, and then somebody is responding. And at first she thinks she's writing to her brother, but she's actually writing to Roman, and he knows, but she doesn't. Because she realizes that she's been writing to her brother, he's not answering, not in the traditional way and not in this magical way. She signs up to become this war correspondent, and Roman actually follows her. She's actually falling in love with him while also falling in love with the guy that she's writing to. Of the two of them, he knows what's going on and she doesn't. So this is also like a sort of like secret identity, you've got mail situation. And yeah, it's about them like being war reporters. And like I said, I really love the first one. I really love the setting, the world. You do have to go in, if you are a big fantasy reader, you do have to adjust your expectations, because the fantasy world building is not that much. Like this really, like the setting is definitely more historical fiction. And then you have all these magical elements woven in. It feels more like a magical realism in a historical setting, but with a little bit more fantasy than most magical realism stories. And I am really, really enjoying Ruthless Vows. I'm flying through it. I started it yesterday, and I had already read like a lot of pages from another book, but this one I just could not stop reading. It has very, very short chapters, which helps a lot, and there's still letters here, which also helps me read faster. I really love these two. I think they're adorable, especially Roman. Roman is just like, he's the opposite of like an alpha hero. He's very much like a guy who's just not into fighting, not into being a soldier or anything. But I don't know, he just endears me to him so much. I love the way he loves Iris and how much he, like the way he expresses his love for her. Obviously he's a writer, so he can do that very well, but I just love it. Rebecca Ross has some beautiful lines in this book as well, and I'm just very intrigued to see what's going to happen, because this is the final book in this duology, so I'm very interested to see how she's going to wrap this up. Although now I just read this one line where I think I know how like the bad guy will be defeated, so very interested to continue on. But yeah, like I said, I'm flying through it. I don't know if I can finish it tonight, but I'll definitely finish it tomorrow. Although I do have to say, tomorrow, one of my most anticipated releases comes out, which is King of Sloth by Anna Huang, which I'm reading that book for another vlog, which I'll leave linked for you, because I'm pretty sure that vlog will come out before this one. Hopefully I can finish this tonight, but if I can't, then I'll definitely, like I said, finish it tomorrow. Very excited. And I would highly recommend this duology, honestly. But just keep in mind that it is a little bit slower and it's not very heavy on the fantasy world building stuff like that. But having said all that, like I said, I would highly recommend it. It is young adult, but I don't know. I've just been missing reading these young adult fantasies. So this is everything that I love. And yeah, and I really love these covers. This is the UK edition, and I just really love it. I also love the cover of the first book. So yeah, I guess I'll just update you once I'm finished. Obviously, I cannot tell you a whole lot about this second book because I don't want to spoil the first book. But yeah, very much enjoying it. And I guess you'll hear my thoughts once I actually finish it. So I finished Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, and I really, really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I would highly, highly recommend this series. If you've not read Divine Rivals yet, what are you doing with your life? Please pick it up. I love this book even more than Divine Rivals. Of course, with sequels, you're already invested in the character. So I was so intrigued by this book, and I just wanted to know what was going to happen with these characters. I love the fact that the typewriter came back again, how they were conversing through that. Even though this book was longer than the first one, it didn't feel that way because I was flying through it. These chapters are very short. I was constantly reading this book, and when I was not reading it, I was constantly thinking about it. Rebecca's writing style is so beautiful and mesmerizing. Like I found myself just constantly thinking about her words. Let me actually read you one from my Goodreads review. So if you want to read more of the quotes, non-spoilery, then definitely check out my Goodreads review. So I'll just start with one that was like on the first page. She had strummed the lullaby for the entire turning of a year, from spring to summer, when gray storms turned the world green and soft. And then from summer to autumn, when the trees turned umber and gold, and rime cast a cloak over the dying grass. From autumn to winter, when mountains grew fangs of ice and the air was brittle, and then to spring once again. So beautiful. I just cannot wait to read more by Rebecca Ross, because if her other books are anything like this duology, then they're gonna be also one of my favorites. Like I said in my review of the first book, once that she does an amazing job showing the cost of war, and she did so in this book as well. I do have to say, I wish she had spent a little bit more time at the end also showing that cost of war, because I felt like the end was rushed a little bit. I wish she would have spent a little bit more time with the emotions of the characters and showing us the aftermath of everything that happened in this book. Also, Roman made like some risky moves in this book that were so unnecessary that I wish he wouldn't have done, because that made me roll my eyes a little bit. But having said all that, those are minor criticisms. This is still a 5-star. I really love this duology, and like I said, I would highly recommend it. This was very popular, like this, especially Divine Rivals was very popular last year, and I can definitely see why. I do have to say, the fantasy world building is not big in here. Like, don't see this as a full-on fantasy, see it as historical fiction with an fantasy elements woven in, almost like a magical realism, but with a historical setting. If you go into that with those expectations, you can definitely love it. But if you go in thinking this is a full-on fantasy novel with amazing world building, you're not gonna get it in these books. But I really loved it. I also loved how this focused a little bit more on the gods, because that was a very intriguing part of this series that we didn't really delve into much in the first book. They were just there, and they were like big entities, but we never really like interacted with the gods or saw them. This book, they are full-on characters that you do see, and I really love that as well. Yeah, it was beautiful. I cannot wait to see what Rebecca Ross is going to do in the future. I have her first series. I have the first book in the first series that I really want to read, and I also want to read her adult duology. I'm thinking of doing a Rebecca Ross vlog, just like I did with my Rebecca Yarros vlog and my Emily Henry vlog. Definitely let me know if you're interested in watching that, because then I can read those duologies that I'm dying to read. Also, I'm in love with these UK covers, even though US covers also are beautiful. I always love these beautiful illustrations, covers of books. Do I have any other thoughts? I don't think so. I loved it. And I also love in this book that you also get 2 side romances that I also really loved. I wouldn't have minded if we got even more pages of both those romances, but alas, we didn't. This is really Roman and Iris's book, or duology, I guess. Those are my thoughts. I don't know what's gonna be next, but I guess you'll see in the next clip. Right now, I'm taking a little bit of a break from this vlog to do some other things. I'm currently reading a new release, and after that, I'm gonna go to Italy, and I'm very excited about that. And after that is almost time for the Mafia romance readathon. And after that, I'm gonna continue on with this vlog. So, but that doesn't matter at all to you, obviously, while you're watching this. But if you're interested in any of those vlogs that I talked about, I'll have those linked for you, and you can definitely check that out if you want to. So I'm currently reading King of Greed by Anna Huang, and I'm on page 133, and I am loving it! Oh my god, what an amazing book. So this is the 3rd book in her Kings of Sin series, and I've only read King of Pride so far, and King of Pride wasn't my favorite. I gave it 3 stars. I read that for my Goodreads Choice Awards vlog, which I'll leave linked for you. But this one is on its way to becoming a 5-star. So this series is gonna be 7 books long, following all these billionaires embodying a different deadly sin. So this one is King of Greed. And you follow Dominic and Alessandra. They've been married for 10 years, and they were very much in love. But when they fell in love, he was very poor, and he always vowed that he was gonna take care of her, and he was gonna be the richest man in the world. He was a foster child, and he was very unloved and unwanted, and obviously he was very poor, and he vowed to never be that poor again, and he wanted to provide for his wife. So he's basically has been on a mission to become like the richest man in the world, and he basically is. He's called the King of Wall Street. He's a billionaire, but throughout that time, in those 10 years, he has made it big. He has become the billionaire. Like I said, he's become the King of Wall Street. But while doing all of that, he has neglected the person that he did all that for, which is Alessandra, his wife. When he misses their 10-year wedding anniversary, she decides to leave him and file for divorce. And that is what kind of... First of all, it shocks him. he didn't realize how miserable she was, and that's basically his cue to change things around. Usually I'm not a big fan of billionaire romances. That's one of the reasons why I didn't really love King of Pride, because that didn't have any other trope except for the fact that he was a billionaire. This, however, has obviously the marriage in trouble, second chance romance element that I am really loving. First of all, this is very heartbreaking. Like, some lines in here, some scenes in here made me really want to cry. I felt so sorry for Dominic, even though obviously it's bad what he did. And I truly understand Alessandra very much, because at one point she even tells him, I wish you had a mistress, because at least then I would have somebody to fight with. But I could not fight with something invisible, which was his job. His job was basically his mistress, and it was a very demanding mistress. And he just, like, slowly over time, she stopped fighting and he basically stopped caring. And like I said, I was very proud of her for finally, taking a stand. And there were moments in here where I would been like, you know what, forgive him. But I'm glad she didn't, because he needs to realize what he did, and he needs to make a permanent change in his life. So right now, at the point where I am, they have, like, he signed the divorce papers, but he is fighting for her, fighting to get her back. And I'm at the part where she got a one-way ticket to Brazil, where her mom is from, and he has followed her. So I am so excited. I'm very interested to see what his grovel is gonna look like, how he's gonna get her back, because I am obviously rooting for them. I also really love the flashbacks of them meeting for the first time and them falling in love. And yeah, I'm really loving it. There's also a thing with his brother. So he had a foster brother that is very shady. So I'm sure that's going to play a part in the last half of this book. But like I said, I'm very much loving it. And this book also has very short chapters, which I love. I love books with short chapters. So far this is going better than King of Pride. I'm loving this more than King of Pride. And like I said, so far it feels like a 5-star. We're going to see for the rest of the book what it's going to be like. But the second half has to be horrible for it to get, I don't know, I feel like so far it's 5 stars. Hopefully it'll stay that way, and I'll update you once I finish. Okay, so I am still reading King of Greed, obviously, and Josh and Jules made an appearance. So first, it was Alessandra seeing them at a distance, and you hear Jules say Josh's name, but then we actually got a scene of Alessandra and Dominic diving, and then Jules and Josh going along, like also going on this diving trip. And I love that. Josh and Jules are one of my favorite couples in the Twisted series. I don't think anybody from the Twisted series made an appearance in King of Pride, so I was really happy to see them in King of Greed. I'm pretty sure you do see Christian in King of Wrath, because obviously we saw Dante in Twisted Lies. But yeah, I was really happy to see Josh and Jules. Just came here to say that. Okay, so I finished King of Greed yesterday. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna put a picture here. I really, really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. You guys know I rarely cry in books, but I usually only cry when I reread a book. But this time I read a section and then I reread that section and then I teared up. Dominic just made me cry. Like, honestly, I just felt so sorry for him, even though what happened 100% was his fault. I loved Alessandra for taking a stand and sticking with that. I honestly think I would have caved much, much earlier, but he did need to grovel, and he did need to realize that his greed was not everything, and that there are more important things in life than being the richest man alive, and that he should be happy with what he has. Because, I mean, she was right. Like, even if he stopped working now, he still would have more than enough money, not only for the rest of his life, but the rest of his children's lives and the children after that, like probably for generations. But because of his greed, he did not realize that. I really loved it. I haven't read a whole lot of marriage in crisis books, and this book made me convinced that I should read more, because, like I said, I just really, really loved it. I love both characters. I could definitely see from both point of views, and I could definitely see this marriage crumbling and how easy that could have happened. So this book wasn't too long, and I like that. But I would have preferred it to be a little bit longer, and what I would have preferred is more chapters of flashbacks of them in the past. Like, I thought, even though I love them in the present now, and obviously there are different people now, I was just swooning over Dominic in the past, and really, like, every single flashback chapter I really loved. So I honestly would have loved to see more of that. And these books of the Kings of Sin series are significantly shorter than her Twisted Love series or her Twisted series. And I think some of those were a little bit too long. For example, Twisted Lies, in my opinion, was too long. But I think this could have been, like I said, like this could have been 100 pages longer, and I would have loved it even more, maybe, even though this was a 5-star. And I'm very happy because this is only the second book I read in this series. So I read King of Pride for the Goodreads Choice Awards, which I'll leave linked for you. But in that video, I told you guys that even though I've given one book in this series a 3, her books are always like hit or miss for me. Like I could give one book 3 stars and another one 5 stars and then another one 2 stars. So it's not that clear for me. And I know that people have different favorites in each series. So I knew that she probably would have another 5-star in her for me, and I was not mistaken. I really thought King of Greed had a high chance of me giving it 5 stars because I do love marriage in trouble romances, and even though billionaire romance are just not my favorite, I knew King of Greed had enough of another plot going on, which was obviously the marriage in crisis or like the second chance romance, which in my opinion King of Pride did not have enough of a secondary plot line that was intriguing for me, apart from the fact that it was just a billionaire romance. I really loved seeing Dominic realize where he went wrong, and even though I mean, I'm sure there are books where the groveling is real. I mean, for example, if you compare it to Twisted Love, Dominic did not grovel the way Alex did in that book, but I think he groveled. His grovel was perfect for their relationship. Like, he showed her in little ways how much he still cared. He was willing to give up things for her that made sense for them as a couple and for him as a character, which I just really loved. And there is another character. So there's a character in here, Dom's brother, that he has a role in this book. And I'm very intrigued by his story. And maybe he'll have his story. I mean, I cannot imagine that she'll not write a book about him. So maybe he is one of the kings. So maybe he will have his own book in this series. I thought he was such an interesting character. So I'm very, very intrigued by him. And like I said in my update, you do get a Jules and Josh cameo, which obviously I loved. So yeah, I would highly recommend this book. You can read this without having read the other ones, because I have only read King of Pride. I still need to read King of Wrath. And then obviously I'm very, very excited for, while I'm filming this, King of Sloth actually comes out tomorrow, so I'm very excited about that. I don't think this video will be uploaded before then. So if you want to know my thoughts on King of Sloth, definitely check out one of my most anticipated releases, which I'll actually have that video linked for you, but very excited about that. But yeah, I would highly, highly recommend King of Greed. Definitely check that book out. And I would honestly recommend this whole series, even though, like I said, I have not read the first book yet, but I'm sure it's great. That is a arranged marriage, forced marriage situation that I'm also very excited to read. But yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna read next, but I guess you'll find that out in the next couple of seconds. Okay, before I get started, excuse my appearance because my hay fever is slowly killing me. So I know my nose is red, my eyes are watering, I'm just a mess. But I am here to give you an update on King of Wrath by Anna Huang. This is the first book in her Kings of Sin series. I read this series out of order. Well, technically I read it out of order. I just skipped the first book. So I started with the second book, then I read the third, the fourth one, and now I'm back reading the first book. This book you follow Dante Russo and Vivian Lau. Dante is being blackmailed by her father to marry her because Dante's family is old money and her family is new money, and her family is doing everything they can to get in like the upper echelons of the upper class. So since he's being blackmailed, he's kind of taking that out on her. So the arrangement is that they're supposed to get married in a year, but they have to live together in that year as well. She is the dutiful daughter who's doing, like, she basically does whatever her parents ask of her, even though she has her own successful company and she's a interior decorator or interior designer or something like that. They're both very attracted to each other, and he eventually realizes that she's nothing like her dad, and he finds her, like I said, very attractive. So at first, actually, he's like, this is your bedroom, your ring is on the bedside table, wear it. You know, that's basically like him asking her to marry him. And in the background, he's trying to ruin her dad and his company. So even though he's slowly falling for her, he knows that it's not going to end well when she finds out what he's planning on doing. This book, you see Christian Harper a lot from Twisted Lies. And actually, this book takes place around the same time as Twisted Lies does, because in this book, Christian's not actually with Stella yet. So that's actually fun. I would say if you read the Twisted series first, then read, and you want to continue on with her series, read this book right after, because they do take place around the same time. I am really, really loving it. I do have to say, technically, yes, you can read them in any which order, but I would highly recommend reading this book first, because I do think, and I was debating when I read King of Pride, because King of Pride is my least favorite so far, which is the second book. Maybe, but I'm not sure. Maybe if I read this book first, because there are some interactions between Kai and Isabella in this book, I might have loved Twisted Pride a little bit more had I read this book first. Having said all that, this book, I'm really loving it. Like, so far it feels like a 5. I really love Dante very much. I love how much Italian is in here. So for those of you who don't know, I went to Italy recently, and Italy is one of my favorite places to visit. I actually did an Italy vlog with like Italian heroes. This book would have been perfect for that, because he constantly, well, he calls her mia cara a lot. And like there are like lots of moments where he speaks to her in Italian that I'm eating that up. I also really love Vivian. I love how she doesn't take things lying down. Like, she constantly keeps him on his toes. He actually also tells her that she has like a, what's it called? Like a smart ass mouth, something like that. He doesn't want to like her, but because she doesn't take things lying down and because she constantly fights against him, first of all, it starts with reluctant respect, and then it turns into more, obviously. Dante's pretty ruthless. This is not a dark romance, but some things he does could veer into that possibility. I love, obviously, the smutty scenes, but I knew that. Obviously, Anna Huang knows how to write those scenes because I've read multiple books by her. This is actually my 8th book by her. Hold on, I have to sneeze. Okay, I'm back. Jeez, I want somebody to just cut off my nose and give me a new one. Oops, and there I go, crying again. Okay, moving on. What else did I want to say? I also really love his staff in his house, especially Greta. Like, I love, first of all, she works for him, but she's also the woman who raised him. So that is also like an interesting dynamic to read about. I love their little dates together. Like, I love how they're a mix of like very extravagant, but also very simple and like cheap. You guys know, I've said this many a times, billionaires who constantly keep throwing their money at things, it's just not that interesting to me. So I prefer a billionaire where it's more than just extravagance and money. I like arranged marriages. I like the forced proximity of being roommates. I love all that. So this is one of my favorites in this series. So far I've given King of Pride 3 stars, King of Greed 5 stars, and King of Sloth 4 stars. So far King of Greed is my favorite. Maybe this book will be my favorite. We'll see. It depends obviously on the third act conflict, although obviously you can see the third act conflict from a mile away. So I guess those are my thoughts for now. I just want to spend as little time on the camera as I can. I am interested to see, before I go, what is going to happen with her family, because she does say that it's obviously money that corrupted them, and what her dad is doing in blackmailing Dante is very, very awful. So I am interested. Obviously, in Twisted Love, things that happened with the parents went one way. I'm interested to see if she's going to do the same thing here, or if she's going to diverge from that, because without spoiling anything, she does say that her parents used to be good parents. Like, it wasn't like, if you compare Dante's parents to her parents growing up, she had the better parents. Like, she had parents that really cared about her, that were there for her, that really took time raising her, and they did fun things. It wasn't until he really became a millionaire that like the whole family changed. Well, I mean, that their parents changed. So I'm interested to see if there's going to be a redemption arc for the dad, or if he's just going to be a bad guy and that's it. I would have preferred the first one, because that is like a little bit more of an interesting storyline. And to see Dante is usually a one strike and you're out type of guy. Maybe, hopefully he'll change. I mean, if it goes the way I want it to, hopefully that will also show character progression, that he's willing to change. and give a second chance just because he loves Vivian so much. This is very interesting, obviously, because since I read this, like all the other books in the series so far, I've already seen like their progression as a couple and what happens in their relationship and a certain human that comes out of their relationship, I guess. So it is really fun to go back and see the start of their relationship. So I'm very much enjoying it. And like I said, this has the potential, while I'm crying, this has the potential to be one of my favorites in the Kings of Sin series and one of my favorite Anna Huang books. So very excited. And I am already pretty far in. Usually I update earlier, but yesterday I had a pretty busy day. And like I said, right now I'm just struggling to breathe normally. I'm on page 241. So almost done, actually. You'll see me in the next clip. Hopefully a little bit of a better appearance, but I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so I finished King of Wrath and I really, really loved it. It is my favorite book in this series, and a part of me is sad that I didn't read this first before reading the rest of the series, because as you know, I started with King of Pride first. I really loved it. I thought it was the perfect length. Comparing it to King of Greed, which of course I also read in this video and I also gave 5 stars. This book felt a little bit too short, and even after I finished it and I gave it 5 stars, I still wanted a little bit more, whereas this one was the perfect length. I didn't want anything else. I thought their story was told beautifully, and I don't want anything more. Although I do have to say, obviously with this couple, since they are the first in the series, I have seen them already. Like, I have gotten a lot of Dante and Vivian throughout the rest of the series, which I have them here, which I'm gonna do a ranking after I'm done finishing this book. So I already see that, like, I've already seen them happily married. I've already seen her pregnant. I've already seen her have a child. So, but honestly, I was debating because I know, for example, some people who loved King of Greed also really loved this one, but I went into this book without really any expectations, and it turned out that this is actually my favorite, so that is great. So obviously there's a third act conflict in here. Since we saw it from a mile away, I was prepared for it, and I thought it was handled perfectly. Like, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I thought Vivian was very rational about everything, and I did love how everything was resolved in the end with her family and also with the whole third act breakup. And actually, which is funny because the rest of the books don't really mention sin a whole lot. This one does. Actually, towards the end of the book, he tells her, "I never claimed to be virtuous, sweetheart. Sinning is more fun." So this book really, since obviously it's the first book in the series, does mention sins and virtue a little bit more. I really loved all the Italian in here. And I also, like I said, I really loved how sometimes it was not translated, so I had to go to the effort of translating it, and then usually it was something really either beautiful or really fun. Yeah, I would highly, highly recommend it. Technically, you can read them without having, you can read them in any order, but I would say if you want to get the full experience, read them in the order of publication. I think you'll get the very best experience if you do it that way, but I obviously haven't. So for the ranking, this is actually my ranking. So in 4th place, my least favorite in the series is King of Pride, which is the second book in the series, and actually the first book I read in this series. I read this book for my Goodreads Choice Award vlog, so if you want to know more of my in-depth thoughts, definitely check that out. Although I do have to say, now having read King of Wrath, since the couple in book 2 was already set up in book 1, maybe I would have loved it a little bit more, although I do have to say the issues I had with that book had a lot to do with the third act conflict, so obviously reading the first book doesn't change my issues with the third act conflict. In 3rd place is King of Sloth, which is the 4th book and the one that, the newest release. I gave this book, I gave King of Pride 3 stars. And then King of Sloth, which is the 4th book and the newest release, I gave 4 stars, and I actually read this one for one of my new releases vlogs, which I'll leave linked for you. And then 2nd place goes to King of Greed, which I gave 5 stars, and it's the 3rd book in this series, and I already talked about this in this vlog, obviously. And then my favorite book is the first one, King of Wrath. So yeah, we're over halfway through now. She still needs to release 3 other books, but I know she'll be releasing a sports romance in between them too. But we still need King of Envy, King of Gluttony, and King of Lust, I'm pretty sure. And I think I already know, we already know who King of Envy is going to be about. And I think I know who King of Gluttony is going to be about, but I have no idea who King of Lust is going to be about, but I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the books in this series. And so far, this is par for the course for me with Anna Huang, because with the Twisted series, I gave Twisted Love 3 stars, Twisted Games 5 stars, Twisted Hate 5 stars, and Twisted Lies 2 stars. So far, this seems to be a series that I'm enjoying a little bit more, since this has a little bit of a higher average rating. So hopefully the other 3 I'm gonna really love, but we'll see. The next series I'm planning on finishing is probably gonna be either the Maple Hill series, which obviously it's another series that I'm not technically finishing, I'm only gonna get caught up on, or I'm going to be finishing the Souls Trilogy by Harley LaRue, but you'll see in the next clip which book I chose. I am having so much fun actually finishing and getting caught up on these series. It makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something, so very happy about that. Yeah, I'll see you in the next clip. Also, for those of you wondering, obviously you can see that I'm feeling a little bit better. Even though I went out today, apparently the hay fever has gone down a little bit, and I'm very happy about that because I looked like a hot mess in the first clip. So I'm feeling a little bit better, so that's great. So I'm here to talk about Soul of a Witch by Harley LaRue. The plan was to update you halfway through, but I never really got around to it. So this is the third and final book in her Souls Trilogy, the first book being Her Soul to Take, and the second book being Her Soul for Revenge. I gave both those books 4 stars, and Her Soul to Take was my favorite out of the 2. I think Soul of a Witch is my new favorite, but I was debating. For a while, it was a 4.5, but the ending ruined it a little bit for me, and now it's a 4-star. Basically, you follow Everly and Callum, and you've seen them in the first 2 books because all 3 books take place around the same time. Everly is the daughter of the villain of this story. She's a witch, and he's been using her entire life because Kent Hadley is the leader of a cult in this town, and he wants to resurrect this god. And to resurrect this god, you have to have 3 human sacrifices. And basically, the heroine from the first book was going to be a sacrifice, and then the heroine from the second book was a previous sacrifice that got away. And the idea is for this god to inhabit Everly because she's such a powerful witch. And Callum is this ancient demon. So this is a witch and a demon romance. So the book starts off with a flashback of him 2,000 years ago, and he's at the war front fighting these gods. And basically every single person that he's ever loved has died. And all of a sudden he sees this witch who tells him that she loves him and that he needs to find her. And he has been waiting for her for 2,000 years because that witch is Everly. When he sees her, he is all like, he would do anything for her. He's head over heels. He's down bad for her. He has been pining for her all these years, and he would do anything for her. Now they're both set out to defeat this god. First, she needs to get strong because she's believed all her life that she was weak, whereas that is the opposite of the case. He needs to come to terms with everything that happened in his past. Yeah, so this is Harley LaRue. She is one of my favorite smutty authors. Like, I've loved almost every book by her. I think especially like her sex scenes are very well done, and these ones are very well done as well. I loved Callum and Everly together. And so they're both switches. So basically every other scene, he's dominant, and then the other one, he's submissive. And I really love that. I haven't read a whole lot of books where the hero is submissive. So I did enjoy the scenes where he was the submissive one. Like, there are some scenes in here that were so fucking hot. But also when he was dominant, those were hot as well. The reason this is 4 stars and not 4.5 is this did feel a little bit too long. So it has 465 pages. If this had been 400 pages or like 380, this might have gotten a 4.5 or even a 5. At one point, like, too many things happened with the plot that I just didn't really care about. Yeah, just some things happened where I'm like, I just really don't care. Also, the way she set up the series, that is one of the reasons why I didn't really love Her Soul for Revenge as much, is because it takes place around the same time. So there's not really a big intrigue because we already know how it's going to end, because we already saw it in Her Soul to Take, which is fine if you're gonna set books up around the same time, but then they should be shorter then, because we already know how it's gonna end. So the intrigue is missing for me then. The reason this is a favorite for me, and why at first I was debating a 4.5 stars, is it did feel different enough from the first 2 books. Like, Her Soul for Revenge is another human and demon pairing, so it felt pretty similar to the first book, whereas this is a witch and a demon, an archdemon too, so it's also a different type of demon. So to me, it did feel different enough for me to give it a higher rating, but since it felt a little bit too long, I gave it a 4, just like the other 2. Like I said, Harley LaRue is definitely a favorite author of mine, and these sex scenes in here were so great, just like the other two. And I am glad I finished another series. I would recommend it, definitely. I would say read them around Halloween because they do take place around Halloween. But keep in mind that they do, like I said, take place around the same time. I do have to say, so I read Her Soul for Revenge pretty close to Her Soul to Take, and that also kind of made me not enjoy it as much. Whereas Soul of a Witch, I read maybe 6 months after Her Soul for Revenge. So if you're gonna read this series, make sure you don't read them back to back to back because the plots are the same. But yeah, I really loved it. This is a 4-star series for me, but I would highly recommend it. And the last book I'm going to be reading for this vlog is Icebreaker, and I'm very excited about it. I haven't started it yet. Hopefully I can finish it tomorrow, but we'll see. Since, I don't know, I'm not slumping necessarily, but I've been reading a little bit less than usual. So we're going to see what's going to happen because I have a pretty busy week the next week because Tuesday I don't have a whole lot of time to read, and then Wednesday and Thursday I'm sleeping somewhere else and we're working a lot. I'm spending a lot of time with colleagues and don't have a lot of alone time, so I don't anticipate a whole lot of time to read both days, and especially I cannot vlog on Wednesday or Thursday, so we'll see. Like I said, hopefully I can finish it tomorrow. That would be perfect. But this has 429 pages, but it has short chapters, which is always perfect. I tend to read those books faster. So yeah, I really enjoyed Wildfire, so hopefully I'll love Icebreaker just as much. Okay, so I'm currently reading Icebreaker, which is the first book in the Maple Hill series. And this finishes off a series because I think I already told you, but I read Wildfire for the Goodreads Choice Awards and I hadn't read this one yet. And I want to read both of them before reading the third book that comes out in August, because I was a little bit lost on the characters when I read the second book. And I feel like the first book really does introduce the rest of the hockey players a little bit better, considering following Henry, I'm pretty sure, and he plays a bigger part in this book. Anyway, I am currently on page 168, and before I tell you the synopsis, I do have to say, I'm pretty sure there's something a little bit off about the pacing because I already read the back, of course, and I already know what this book is about, and a big part of the plot hasn't happened yet, whereas it is in the synopsis, so that just tells me a little bit that, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna struggle with the pacing. I don't feel it yet, but if like almost halfway through a major part of the plot has not even started yet, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm going to tell you the synopsis and I will tell you the plot line that I'm talking about. So basically you follow Nate and Anastasia. Stassi is a figure skater and she's worked her entire life to get a spot at the US Olympic team. And he's a hockey player, of course. Their college has 2 rinks and one of the rinks gets destroyed. So they have to share a rink. And that puts them in proximity to each other. He lies at some point because he doesn't know what happened, and he just gets off on the wrong foot with her. Also, her figure skater partner doesn't like him, but he really doesn't like anybody that she's hanging out with if it's a guy. And then Nate tries everything in his power to get her to like him because since they're sharing a rink, he does want them to be civil about it. Plus, he does really find her attractive, so along the way, they have some interactions where they're having, like, where things get steamy. And then the plot point I'm talking about is her skating partner, I think, quits. So she needs somebody to fill in. And I'm pretty sure Nate is going to fill in for the figure skater or for her partner. So like I said, I'm about almost halfway through and that hasn't, like, she's still skating with her asshole of a skating partner. Also, what I enjoy about this book, and I do think that Hannah Grace portrays like a college student's sex life pretty well. Usually with these sports romances or a lot of romances, the guy is pretty sexually active before he meets his girl, whereas the female main character a lot of the time is not really. In this book, we do see her have a friends with benefit type of relationship with somebody else. And while I knew, obviously, at the beginning, I'm like, okay, why are we seeing that? Because she's obviously not going to end up with this guy. But on the other hand, I did find that refreshing because, like I said, you normally don't get to see that. And I did enjoy seeing her have, like, already have a healthy sex life before meeting the guy she's gonna end up with. I like that because that is reality. I do have to say, the guy that is her friends with benefits guy, Ryan, I think his name is. I really like him. Like, I don't think she's gonna write a book about him, but I would love that. I think he's very adorable. Another guy I'm very happy to see is Henry, and he's gonna be the next story we get, so very excited about that. And of course, Russ, I already know. I read his book and I really did enjoy him. We haven't seen a lot of him yet, but the scenes we did get, I really enjoyed. So far, I'm really liking it. It is pretty steamy already. Like, they really have amazing sexual chemistry, and I do like all the steamy scenes we get. Nate is just the sweetest. I think Hannah Grace writes heroes very well, because Russ was also so adorable and I really loved him. And Nate, I'm also really loving. He's so sweet and caring and attentive. And yeah, so far I think Aurora I prefer a little bit more than Stassi, but I am enjoying Stassi. The thing with this book though, I do have to say, there is she gives a trigger warning about counting calories, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, it also contains a focus on eating habits. That is one of my triggers. And it is a little bit triggering for me, I'm not gonna lie. So she's a figure skater and her partner needs to pick her up, throw her around, stuff like that. And he's constantly up her case that she needs to lose weight. Whereas both men in her life, both Ryan when he was her friends with benefits guy, but also Nate, want her to eat and tell her that she's not heavy and they can throw her around any day of the week. But she is insecure about that, and since obviously she wants to succeed and her partner is having issues carrying her, meaning that their act together, obviously if he cannot hold her, then they cannot do the moves properly. Like I said, it is a trigger for me. I do understand why she's harping on that for herself, but I don't really like reading about that. But having said that, even though it is a little bit triggering, it's not that much. It's not triggering me a lot where I cannot enjoy the book, because I am really enjoying it, like I said. She has commitment issues, so she really doesn't want to be in a relationship. He wants to have more with her, and there are already some scenes where both of them are a little bit jealous, which I do enjoy. Like I said, I'm almost halfway through, and the chapters are really short, so I'm flying through it. I do have to say, tonight I have a little bit of time to read, but I still have to pack for my work trip. I have to clean my kitchen a little bit since I'm not sleeping at my house for 3 nights. So I don't know when I'm gonna finish this. Hopefully, actually, I can finish it tomorrow, but I have plans in the evening as well. So we'll see. And usually I have a little bit of time to read on Wednesdays, but I know Wednesday is gonna be pretty busy at work too. And then Thursday, I don't have any time to read. So hopefully I can finish this before Friday, because I really want to have this video up by Friday. And I have some time on trains, both on Tuesday and on Wednesday. Hopefully I can finish this, and then I'll give you my updates. Maybe I'll actually give you my updates when I'm on this work trip, but we'll see. Like I said, I'm enjoying it, but we'll have to see for the rest of the book, because this is a little bit over 400 pages. Sometimes I have some issues with the books that are a little bit longer. And like I said, since usually, I truly don't understand why this plot point hasn't already been introduced, which makes me a little bit weary of the second half, but we'll see. Like I said, so far, I'm just saying things that are not based on what I've actually read. It's more like what I think will happen. So I guess I'll give you my final thoughts and finish off this vlog when I finish this. So I have to do this update very quick because my camera battery is dying, but I finished Icebreaker and I really enjoyed it. I do have to say that I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because it did feel a little bit too long, and there was her partner drama took up way too much of this plot. So she has some issues with her partner Aaron, and I didn't really care about that, especially since he had some issues with his dad that I found a more interesting plot line that I wish she would have focused on more than she did the Aaron drama. So that's why it was 4.5 stars, but I did really love it. I especially loved Nate. I thought he was such a great hero. He was so swoon-worthy and so sweet. I just loved him so much. And I also really loved her. I love that she had some realistic issues that she was very much dealing with. And I just love the fact that he was all in from the very beginning and she's the one that was a little bit reluctant. I do have to say, out of the two, so I read Wildfire. Obviously, I preferred Wildfire a little bit more. This definitely felt very much, like there were some issues in here that were a little bit clunky that I do think are because this was her debut book, like I said. So there's the Erin drama that I just didn't care about, and she had some plot lines that she started but didn't really follow through on. Like, for example, there was a lot of time spent here with the guy that was her friends with benefits, and that never really went anywhere. And I was like, okay, so you claim that he's your best friend, yet after like the halfway mark we rarely see him. So what was the point of naming him as her best friend? And like I said, I was way more interested in his relationship with his dad. We got one scene where we find out that maybe the dad is not as bad as he thought he was, but that never really got resolved. So that's why I think I prefer Wildfire. But having said all that, this was thoroughly entertaining, and I do think so. It took me 8 days to finish it, and a part of that is because I was very busy with work, and 3 days out of the 8, I was actually not sleeping at home, partly because of work, and especially like one day, 2 days, I didn't have any time to read because of work. Like we had some very, very long days, and the time off I did get was spent with colleagues and not reading. So there were like 2 or 3 days where I physically could not read, which also was a little bit of a detriment to this book that had nothing to do with this book. But I really loved the figure skating in here. I loved the ice hockey in here, of course, and I just really loved them practicing together. It reminded me very much of Step Up, which was one of my favorite movies growing up. Obviously, that was ballet and this is ice hockey, but the premise was a little bit similar. Like he did something that was bad and now he has to practice with her. And this guy, like this case is the same thing, except for he really likes her. Like he knew her obviously from the beginning. So I just loved that dynamic. I would have loved to see a little bit more of them practicing together because I thought it was I just love those scenes of them practicing together. I loved her relationship with his friends too. And I would highly recommend it. Like I said, 4.5 stars is still a very high rating. And I cannot wait to read Henry's book. We saw a lot of him in this book. His book will come out in August, so very much looking forward to that. I wish Hannah Grace wrote a little bit faster because I believe she's coming out with 1 book a year, which is fine. Obviously, a lot of authors come out with 1 book a year. And I don't know, do any of you know how many books are going to be in the series? So far it's 3, obviously, but since she's introduced a lot of characters in this series, I don't know, maybe she'll write more than 3. We'll see. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I would highly recommend it. And I do think the issues I had with this book are because of the fact that this was her first published novel. I do have to say the smutty scenes in here were very hot. So, and I did enjoy, I knew that she did those well because obviously it's one of the reasons why this became so popular. But also I read obviously Wildfire, and I also loved the smutty scenes in there. I loved reading about Russ in here too. You didn't get to see a lot of him, but since he's the main character in Wildfire, I loved seeing his scenes in here. So that was the last book for my series vlog. I had a great time reading and finishing these series. I would really love to know in the comments below if you read any of these series and what your thoughts were. And also, I would really love your feedback on whether or not you like this vlog, because I really want to do more of them because it does force me to finish some series, which is definitely one of my goals this year. So I really hope you enjoyed this style of vlogs because I think I will be doing them in the future. And obviously I would love if you love them too. So leave all your thoughts in the comments below, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.